Hi, Mel here. I'm an eating disorder counsellor and it's Eating Disorders Awareness Week. And this week I've made my own theme because I've gone rogue and that's what I do. And so I'm talking about weight loss injections because I don't feel like this is talked about anywhere near as much as we should be doing in the context of disordered eating and eating disorders. So just to clarify here as well, I use the term disordered eating as it's broader than just the labels or diagnosis that comes with eating disorders. So, what I'm talking about today, there are a lot of eating disorders that are unrecognised and undiagnosed. This is for various reasons because there's barriers to help, because there is medical weight stigma, people not necessarily being recognised for having eating disorders, especially for those in larger bodies, and people not recognising themselves that this might be a form of disordered eating or eating disorder. So I'll give you an example. This isn't from any particular person or client. This is just a general theme that I tend to see in my practice. So people might say, oh, I didn't realise that binge eating disorder was actually a thing, or that I had that. I just thought I couldn't stop eating. I just thought it was my fault, that I didn't have enough willpower, that I just hadn't found the right diet, that I just hadn't tried hard enough, that it was my fault. So there's a lot of self-blame and shame that goes on here, and our society really does not help with that as well, with the idea that if you just want to lose weight, then you just eat less and move more and all this kind of nonsense as well. So, diet culture and weight stigma has a big part to play in this because it really drives people looking for ways to lose weight, and it drives people to disordered eating and sometimes eating disorders. So, eating disorders aren't always based in the pursuit of weight loss. I'm just talking about the ones here that are, and that's what I see a lot in my practice. I think that eating disorders aren't really what people think they are. So people tend to think anorexia, they tend to think restrictive eating disorders, teenage girls, and that's not the case at all. That's not the realities of what we're seeing with people with eating disorders. It's usually people in larger bodies or people at higher weights, not underweight either way. Anorexia is actually the least prevalent eating disorder. There's a high mortality rate, so it's really concerning. But I think a lot of what we see when people are very sick in hospitals is just the firefighting side of it, where there's a whole range of things before that where we could have an earlier intervention, where we can prevent eating disorders from getting that bad that people need to be hospitalized. And this is why I feel very passionate about the work that I do and that others do in this field of trying to prevent eating disorders from getting any worse, helping people as they first recognize that there's a problem, and helping people recognize in the first place, because this is a big problem. How this connects to weight loss injections is that if people don't recognize that they have an eating disorder or disordered eating, they're probably not likely to go to their doctor and present it in that way. They're probably going to go and say, hey, I can't stop eating and I desperately need some help with this because everyone around me is telling me that I'm going to die if I don't eat, because this is what happens to people. They get so scared because of the societal view on fatness of like, it's the worst thing in the world, that you're gonna have an early death if you don't sort yourself out, and all this kind of fear-mongering stuff. So they're like, I'm desperate to lose weight. And so if they go and say that to a medical professional, they're probably going to be like, okay, well, let's send you to a weight management service or put you on some kind of diet. And then that may also lead through to being able to get weight loss injections on the NHS. For also a lot of other people, that might mean that they're not eligible and sent away just to deal with this on their own. Either way, the problem has not really been thought of in the context of an eating disorder. And I think this is because eating disorders are othered a lot. They're seen as that other very scary medical thing over there. They're seen as like, people dying with anorexia. And like I said, that is not usually what we're seeing. That is a smaller percentage. Most of what we're seeing is people generally struggling with food on a day-to-day basis, and it's very in the here and now. So if I can leave you with one message, it's just that it's everywhere around you. It's in the here and now. It's people in larger bodies. It's people engaging in lots of different dieting, hating themselves, trying to change themselves, taking weight loss injections, all this desperation to escape weight stigma being part of it, and also because people want to, improve the health. But that's a whole other thing. I'll make a whole other video about that. Either way, there are a lot of people who want to lose weight, and our society is saying you need to lose weight, and everybody's just piling this pressure on, and it's just leading to blame and shame. And so, of course, people are going to choose to take weight loss injections. Of course, this is going to lead down that path. But my concern is, what are we covering up? What kind of disordered eating or eating disorder are we covering up here? What if people should be getting more relevant help for this instead of just being put on weight loss injections instead? And a lot of what I'm talking about here isn't necessarily people who are doing this kind of proper way, I suppose. I don't mean that but in a way that is safe and supported. Hopefully that's the way that this has been done through the NHS. It's everybody else going and trying to source these drugs online. There's a lot of dangers in itself that come from that. And people sourcing these drugs who don't hit the criteria, who aren't actually fat, for want of a better word, it's a reclaimed term in that sense. For people, who are in normal size bodies or below weight, for instance, as well. We know how easy it is for these drugs to get online, and so there is absolutely no doubt that there are people who are probably underweight who are trying to source these drugs, and that scares me in the sense that I do wonder sometimes if society is going to have big wake-up call one day when somebody underweight, when one of those young vulnerable girls that you think of when you think anorexia, one of those is going to have taken weight loss drugs and be very seriously ill or die. So that's also my concern in this as well. I was recently listening to a podcast by Jonathan Van Ness. It's called Getting Curious. And Jonathan talks about binge eating all the way through it. And in the video online, they talk about the same thing of struggling with binge eating for a long time. And they talk to a doctor who pretty much just kind of minimizes all that. And Jonathan says, isn't this weight loss injections, aren't they just injectable eating disorders in some ways? And the doctor goes, oh, no, eating disorders very serious over there. No, these weight loss drugs are he was effectively saying they're great, and put eating disorders there in this other box of very serious stuff. Jonathan had been talking about having binge eating and binge eating all the way through it. And that was a real concern of the fact that somebody hadn't recognized, even though binge eating disorder is a very real eating disorder and is the most prevalent, other than the other box, but it's way more prevalent than anorexia or bulimia. So it's really, really important that we don't do that we don't minimize disordered eating, and that, in yourself, if you're listening to this and considering taking weight loss injections, that you've looked at this, properly, what's going to happen actually if you're taking these drugs, and there is something actually in your relationship with food that you need to address instead. And if you're a professional, are you actually just making those assumptions about eating disorders? Are we going default scary eating disorder, someone in hospital going to die? Because that's not realistic of what we're seeing now. What we're seeing is people struggling with binge eating, people in larger bodies, people of all genders, of all sizes. And this is actually the theme of Eating Disorders Awareness Week. But sometimes the theme is as anyone is affected by eating disorders. But I think sometimes that's just too much of a blanket statement. And what I'd really like to see happening is people going, yes, this is actually affecting people who are in larger bodies. And I think that that's where it's very difficult to shake off this idea of the thin girl with anorexia, and actually start looking at it of people of all genders, of all ages, of all backgrounds, who are quite often in larger bodies. So thank you for listening to me today. I'm making videos throughout this week on different aspects of disordered eating and weight stigma and weight loss injections. And I've also written about a food noise on my blog if you're interested as well. So I'll see you again with another video soon. Thanks.